Go, 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 go.
3, 2, 1, 4 tires.
Still there, inside.
What a jump! What a jump!
The track is wet. It's good.
Still there, clear.
3, 2, 1. Green flag, green flag.
Hey everyone, I'm Dom Capilupo from Jackson, New Jersey.
Sam Dooley, Troy, Alabama.
Steve Ray, suffering through some technical difficulties, still from the Twin Cities, Minnesota.
And Wesley Riddle, no technical difficulties at the moment. Raleigh, North Carolina.
Don't jinx yourself.
All right.
Only at a time before West freezes.
And that is how we start episode 6 of the Four and Field podcast. We're back, ready to talk about Darlington, and we have some more news to talk about this week. A lot of contracts getting signed in regards to the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season. But before we get into that, we got to get into our money stops of the week. And this week, leading it off is going to be none other than technical difficulties, man, Steve.
Yeah, I'll try to get through this as quick as I can without any pain, hopefully. My money stop of the week, speaking on the contracts, is going to be a guy who just signed to move back up into the Cup Series. Spent 1 year there in 2020 and then moved back to the trucks, to Xfinity. I mean, of course, we're talking about John Hunter Nemechek. This is one of the worst kept secrets in the garage over the last couple weeks, especially with Legacy saying that they were going to move to Toyota. And Toyota is really high on John Hunter Nemechek, and for all the right reasons. I mean, he's setting the world on fire in the Xfinity Series. He did in the Truck Series, and I think with Legacy moving to Toyota next year and going to have a lot more help from Toyota, I think it's only going to elevate John Hunter Nemechek and, frankly, his teammate Eric Jones too to the next level. I'm thinking that Legacy next year will be on the path that we're talking about RFK this year, where they were really struggling, and then RFK has really picked it up. I think we're going to be saying the same thing, but about Legacy next year. Hopefully Jimmy Johnson comes back for some races next year. I know that there's been some rumors of him coming back. I don't know if anything is confirmed yet, but hopefully he comes back for some races next year. It's always good to see Jimmy Johnson back in the races. So with John Hunter moving up to the Cup Series next year, that just solidifies the seat that we've been talking about as to who's going to fill it. So I expect great things for them next year, and hopefully we see great things from them.
Yeah, taking Noah out of that car made this really easy. There's no awkwardness. There's no announcing John Hunter the 42 while Noah is still driving the car. So it just made it a more seamless transition for the 42 guys. Is right now they've had Hocevar in the car last week. They're going to have him in there again this week at Kansas. So other than that, I mean, we don't know who's going to drive that car moving forward. It could still be Carson Hocevar. Could be some Josh Berry. We don't know. But that is something we'll find out, I'm sure, coming up here soon. On to our next money stop. We got Wes.
All right, guys. So for my money stop of the week, I'm going with 20-year-old Carson Waffle, who's going to be making his ARCA debut, as well as his truck debut in the upcoming weeks. It's something that I'm really looking forward to, being a big junior motorsports guy. Carson's going to have a huge career ahead for him because he's got a lot of intel coming in from some of the biggest guys in the sport. You've got his father, first off, Travis, former Truck Series champion. You've got Dale Earnhardt Jr., one of the most notable names in all of the sport. And then you've got Josh Berry, who's going to the Cup Series this year. who's won, late model championships driving for Junior Motorsports and has won a lot in the same car that he's driving, right? And has been, a key part in his development, right? So it's going to be cool to see what the young kid can do, especially coming up since he's never really raced on like a mile and a half. So Kansas will be his first race. We'll have to see what he does this weekend in the ARCA series. And then I guess he'll follow it up with Bristol in a couple weeks when the truck series goes. And he'll actually be in Aspire equipment, which is, pretty solid stuff for a debut, right? We saw Corey LaJoy, Kyle Larson, some of those guys racing it this year. So for him to get a step up like that, it's going to be huge. But it'll be really cool to see what old Carson can do. And hopefully it's going to be the first kind of steps into creating a big career future. I think that it's really going to be kind of the, it's going to be a stepping stone, right? But it'll be cool to see what he's able to do kind of in his introductory moves into some of the elite series in NASCAR.
Absolutely, with Carson Quaffle definitely rising through the ranks in the Cars Tour and the late model series. Very talented race car driver, obviously. Could be an audition here for a potential truck ride maybe next year or the year after. So important races coming up for him in trying to get that, spring into the truck series or even an Xfinity ride. You never know nowadays. These guys don't typically take the traditional route of going trucks to Xfinity then Cup. You got people going straight to Xfinity or going from trucks to Cup. You just don't know the paths nowadays because all three vehicles drive so differently. So there's no real benefit nowadays of really growing in the Xfinity series if you're just going to go to the Cup series because the cars drive nothing alike.
Yeah, and a big example of that is like, obviously Chase Briscoe went into a bad situation at Stewart-Haas whenever he came up, but like he was dominating in the Xfinity cars, like he was winning everything, and then he comes up and he's okay sometimes, and Stewart-Haas is a whole different thing. But like look at like Austin Cindric. Austin Cindric did the same thing, wins everything, goes up to Cup, and that Penske was not bad last year. Penske won the drivers' championship last year. Like Penske was good last year, and I mean, outside of his 500 win, like Cindric wasn't very good. And then now Ty Gibbs is probably the best of the last few Xfinity champions that were like really dominant in their Xfinity championship year that moved up. He's probably been the best, and he didn't even make the playoffs this year. So yeah, it's so different. The traditional, just like the thing that we saw a lot of our lives, where you see like a William Byron go trucks Xfinity Cup, or you see like Chase Elliott go trucks Xfinity Cup. Like that's just not the blueprint anymore because of how crazy different, especially the next gen car is.
Yeah, it's its own animal. And if anything, the truck drives more similar to the Cup car than the Xfinity does. So you really, as potential rumors swarm around that second Spire car, it looks like it's going to be the other Carson Hocevar. He's going to go straight from trucks to Cup with only a handful of Xfinity starts, leading to, because a lot of it is manipulation of the air, and that's what truck racing is at almost every track now. And that's what it's kind of turned into in the Cup Series. If you're the leader, as long as you can stay in front of the car behind you, you could take all the air off their nose, and the guy behind you is going to plow tight in the corner. And that's truck racing at its finest nowadays. Every mile and a half is a typical, just almost super speedway like racing, with the trucks all packed up and just trying to basically work the draft and get clean air in the corners.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're seeing in the Cup Series now. You're going to see it at Kansas. You're going to see it. We saw it at Darlington. Just really anywhere a mile and a half or more, really even short tracks nowadays. It's like, get your car in front of that guy behind you and you're good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to send it back to you, Britt, for your money stop.
Yeah, now that we've had our nice little off-topic there speech about everything, I'm gonna head back to similar or the same team of what Steve was talking about, which is Legacy Motor Club.
This is incredible.
And first of all, I'm gonna say, editor, roll the clip right now of Dom, not everyone. Dom was flaming me last week for saying that I thought that Eric Jones was gonna do well. That guy's a wheel man. He is a wheel man. And just run the clip. Go ahead, because you let Eric Jones fall into my
Thank
lap.
you.
So
All
you're
right,
gonna
so
tell
as we're typing up our notes for Kansas, we can just go ahead and put Britt is going to go ahead and pick first for Kansas.
Yeah, go ahead.
So
Yeah.
you're gonna sit here and clown me for picking Ricky Stenhouse Jr. to move to the round of 12, but you're gonna pick a legacy car to win a race?
Hey man, Legacy car won the race last year, so
Yeah, but they weren't this bad.
because that I keep receipts on that. Okay, but Eric Jones top 10 for Legacy, which this year has been unheard of for them to be that fast. He was up in third at one point. Did he get up to second? I was halfway watching because I had work, but he was fast. He looked good. And I was blown away. I picked him and I was blown away. Like, I didn't actually, that was more just a shot in the dark. Like, hey, historically he's good here. Let's just see what we can do, because we can only pick these drivers once and might as well go with a Darlington specialist like Eric Jones for this week. And he surprised me. I kept looking and he was up there. And a top 10 for Legacy with the way that this year has gone, especially since they announced the Toyota stuff and Chevy has just done nothing for them. Like, this is groundbreaking stuff for them right here. And I agree with what Steve was saying earlier about the fact that we could be looking at them next year going to Toyota, especially with the manufacturer backing that they're getting going over to Toyota. We could look at them as being an RFK this year, or maybe the year after, or this upcoming year, maybe the year after that. Just because, I mean, just seeing that, like, with that awful equipment, Eric Jones was able to drive that thing up to the top 10. Like, he's really good at Darlington, but like a lot of that has, I mean, especially now, a lot of that has to do with the car. So it's like, I think that Legacy took a big stride this week. I'm not saying that going into Kansas they're going to be anywhere near top 10, top 15. They're probably going to be in the 20s like they usually are. But it was very telling of Legacy that they're working on it, and it was very, very telling of Eric Jones and just how good he is and how he's in kind of a bad situation right now with where that team is. But Eric Jones still, I've always been the first one to flame Eric Jones for anything that he does wrong, but the kid's got talent, and he puts it on display week in and week out, just trying to fight the car and how slow it is. And the situation, the cards that he's been dealt are not the greatest, but my props to Eric Jones for top 10 this week. It was really awesome to see him battling up there close to the lead.
Yeah, he was running top 5 a couple of points during the race, and especially once they got in, probably about 100 to go. He was still up inside the top 5. Some cautions kind of fell, and he kind of faded back and got some. I think he might have been on the bottom for a couple of restarts and lost some spots, but completely, I mean, agree with what you said, Britt. It's just a solid weekend for them, not only for Eric Jones, but how about Carson Hocevar coming in the 42 car and ended up finishing 17th for a guy that's making a second cup start. I mean, is it really the Legacy equipment, or was it Noah Gregson who's just a bad driver? Kind of.
You're not wrong. Like,
yeah. But yeah, great run for Legacy, and hopefully it wasn't just a one race fluke. Hopefully they can find speed at Kansas.
One thing that team is not struggling with is their pit stops. They were killing it on pit road. Every time in that first stage they would pit, Eric Jones was gaining like 5 spots on pit road. So they've got something figured out. I think there's a good foundation for that team going into next year. They're going to get more help, obviously, from Toyota. So that team could contend a little more, as they kind of showed towards the end of last season. This season really was unexpected. I thought Eric Jones was going to have a chance at competing for a playoff spot this year, the way they ran at the end of last year. That team, if they were in the playoffs, I'm pretty sure probably could have made like the round of 8 last year, the way they were running in the playoffs. So next season, I think there's some good things ahead for that team. And then you get John Hunter in the car. I think that team could contend for a win or two next year.
Anytime you can see some variety in the field, it's always awesome to see. Because, like, you're always gonna have your Hendricks and your Gibbs and your Penske's and those top dogs. But anytime you can see, like, even though Legacy, what used to be Petty, I mean, like, our lifetime at least, they've been an underdog. I mean, I can't remember a time where I was like, yeah, that 43 car is going to go out and win this race off of just pure dominance and pure speed. So anytime you get to see like a variety of different people up front, it's really good for the sport itself and good for the competitiveness.
Yeah, that's what the next gen era has brought us, with the single source parts and the cars being so similar. It's harder for teams to gain advantages based on their limited ability to change the cars. So that it has brought that parity into the Cup Series now, which is very good. We're seeing drivers like Michael McDowell, Ricky Stenhouse get race wins to get themselves into the playoffs. And you're going to see, obviously, McDowell didn't have his best run. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But you're giving people chances like Ricky Stenhouse here to make the round of 12. And it's not far-fetched anymore to say that. Yeah, you could roll your eyes all you want.
It's
but
still pretty far.
Hey, he finished where was he? 16th. I mean, that's not bad, especially when Truex shits the bed and Hamlin's team shits the bed. So I mean, that's pretty good for him.
Well, you did mention Denny Hamlin, and I got to do my money stop here. It is Denny Hamlin re-signing with Joe Gibbs Racing for a multi-year deal. Looks like Denny Hamlin will retire in that 11 car at Joe Gibbs Racing, just like it should be. There's no controversy here. There's no Toyota and Joe Gibbs letting go of another star driver, just like Kyle Busch last year. But it just seemed like from the beginning, they said it, everyone was saying it. This was much different than the Kyle Busch situation from last year. It seemed like from mid-season on that it was well known that Kyle Busch wasn't going to be returning to Joe Gibbs Racing. Just the way Kyle's demeanor was towards Joe Gibbs himself at the racetrack, it just, you knew Kyle wasn't coming back. With Denny, it's been business as usual. He's been very good with Joe Gibbs, and I'm happy everything worked out, because it would be really weird to see Hamlin and 2311 to switch to Ford, because that would have been really weird, and I don't know if it really would have benefited them at all, because they're sitting there as the almost like 1A team right now at Toyota, and that would not be the case at Ford with Penske and RFK sitting there, and Stewart-Haas as of right now probably getting more resources than 2311 would have gotten. So good to see that everything worked out, and Toyota gets to keep Michael Jordan as a main partner with them. So just a win-win for everyone in this situation. I think this allows that 5-year plan for 2311 to continue to be fulfilled, as I think next year even they could be serious contenders to maybe make a championship 4 run, especially with like Tyler Reddick in that 45 team, if they could put everything together. Now I want to move on to Darlington. Wes had the genius idea of giving us all 4 drivers from the playoffs, randomly selected, and we're just going to give a brief recap for each driver, how their day went and what the outlook is here going forward. So with this one, I'll keep rolling on. First, I'm going to start with Michael McDowell. A rough day, a day they really couldn't afford. 32nd place finish, getting in no stage points. Just the whole weekend was not very good for Michael McDowell. Just something they couldn't afford, like I said. And then getting collected in that last big crash with Todd Gilliland getting turned by Kyle Busch. And then Denny Hamlin went to avoid him, and Michael McDowell plowed right in the back of him. Michael McDowell currently sits 19 points out. That doesn't seem like a lot, but it is when you're in a 34 car and you're not consistently up there running in the top 5 to get those crucial stage points. So going to be very tough for Michael McDowell. That might have sealed his fate here already. Next, I'm going to move on to Ryan Blaney. A top 10 finish for Ryan Blaney. Before the weekend, you would have said that is a really good run for him at Darlington. Statistically, one of his worst tracks. But in practice, it seemed like Blaney had arguably the best car. So I think that team expected a little more. They really just didn't have the handle on things for most of the race. So the way the race went out, getting P9 with very limited troubles as many playoff drivers had, I think you walk away with that 12 team not in a bad situation. You're 16 points above the cut line. I think Kansas is a good track for Blaney. Bristol, another good track for Blaney. I think the 12 might be in a good spot to get to the round of 12. Now, Ross Chastain, I've been harping on him. Where'd he go? What happened? And the same could be said in stage 1. Went a lap down. They were out to lunch. They did not look good at all. It really looked like Chastain might be in some serious trouble, and they just kept going at it. I think this was a race of attrition for them. They quietly just kept gaining a couple spots here and there just throughout the race, and all of a sudden you pop up. He's in the top 5 there in the late running. So a really good start to the playoffs for Ross Chastain. He currently sits 10th, 13 points above the cut line. And then I'm going to wrap it up with Chris Buescher, another top 5, a 3rd place finish for Buescher. Again, another quiet race. Buescher just hung in the back end of the top 10 all day. And when the time was right, got up there into the top 3 and was closing in on the leaders there at the end. Who knows if that race maybe goes 10, 20 more laps, Buescher might be a big factor there in that finish. Chris Buescher he's on a roll. Top 3 in the last 4 oval races. 3 of those wins. Chris Buescher is looking real good. 4th in points. He is looking really good. 27 above the cut line. Going to take something really detrimental to knock him out of the playoffs here in round of 16.
All right, so now moving on to my 4 drivers that were randomly selected for me. First of all, oh man, I love starting at the bottom. Denny Hamlin, man. Yeah, turn away, Dom. Get away. You're a little. If you're a little squirmish and you're a Denny Hamlin fan, you might want to turn it off now, because this man, I don't know. Denny Hamlin seems to try and swallow pieces of food that are way too big for him, because he's choking all the damn time. Him, his team, something or another. Something always happens. There's always a reason. There's always an excuse for Denny Hamlin. But he found a way. He was the fastest car, and he was cooking. He was cooking at the Cookout Southern 500 and pissed it away. Just did. There's no other way to describe it than just pissed away. That was awful. Once again, I missed a lot of it because I was working at the time that the race was going on. But I heard that there was just some phantom thing that happened that sent him to the back and on pit road. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you can't have this is the playoffs. You can't have things set you back like that. You can't have a 25th finish. The 25th place finish in the first race of the playoffs. So I mean, obviously he's got that huge points cushion, so he's okay right now. But man, when you got that fast of a car, that one's got to suck. I'm sorry, Dom. I'll give you a hug for it later, because those are the days where it just feels like you got it won, and then it's just ripped from you. But
You can't put that all on Denny Hamlin though, because this pains me a little bit to defend Denny Hamlin, but he won both stages and he can't control that his pit crew can't tighten a lug, one single lug on a wheel all the way. And then you can't help that Michael McDowell just completely arca brakes right into Denny Hamlin. You can't.
I'm still gonna blame Denny Hamlin. No matter what, I'm blaming Denny Hamlin.
Don't get me wrong. I like seeing him finish 25th, but you can't put it
Roll
all on.
Tide. Go Trojans.
You can't put it all on Denny Hamlin. That it was his fault.
That's why I scoped in the team. The team finds a way to choke just as well, just as good as Denny is at choking. The team is equally as good at choking, and I'm proud of all of them for just choking. It's great. It's wonderful to see, and I'm glad that they did it. Anyways, moving on. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Well, I'll be damned. I mean, I'm not on the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. makes the round of 12 train. I'm not like stupid, but he got a 16th place finish. He finished above a few, namely Kevin Harvick, who finished 19th. That's a good one right there, because he's sitting around that line, right? So a 16th place finish, that's good enough. If you can get people to make mistakes that are in front of you in these next two races, you stick around 16th, 15th, you may have a chance. It's possible. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but if you hang around there, it's possible. So proud of you, Ricky Stenhouse. Moving on, Joey. Joey, you've got my heart. Once again, did not watch. It just seemed like he kind of had a midday. He started 6th, finished 12th. If anyone can elaborate here on what happened, it just feels like it was a pretty. It was good to have him back, like seeming halfway relevant again for the first time since like Atlanta when he won. But just kind of a run of the mill, finish what you got to do, stay how many points above? 3 points above. You're still above the cut line though, so you know what? I'll take it as a Joey Logano fan. I mean, I'd like more, but it's Darlington. We're going to Kansas, which is statistically he's one of the best active drivers at it right now. So looking forward is better as long as you can manage the lady in black and not junk yourself. And then where are we going? And Kyle Larson. I got to pull the winner. And after Denny Hamlin had put on a masterclass and an ass whooping of the field, guess who came back around? Kyle Larson, who's every ass whooping it feels like has either been the 5 car, the 19, or the 11. Like the master classes that we've seen this year, like the boring ass races, because there's so much dominance, and that 5 car put it out front, stayed out front. Reddick was up there challenging, but I mean, especially with the way that the package is now, especially and so the 5 car, Kyle Larson, not much to say. He's just really good at driving straight and turning left. He's just really good at this type of racetrack as well, where you're running close to the wall. So yeah, that's all I got right there.
Well, I guess I'll follow up. I had, of course, my 4 random drivers. Nothing too crazy, but 2 definitely to talk about that were involved together. I'll save those for here in a minute. But the first 2 I had got top 10s and had solid days, and they needed solid days. The first was William Byron. He goes in as the leading driver behind Kyle Larson without a win. He's got the most points at the moment, plus 45 from the cut. I think Byron's in good shape. He can afford maybe 1 bad round. Can't afford 2. I mean, you kind of give yourself a little bit of a cushion when you're 45 points above the cut line. So with 2 races left, I think Byron's in a good place. Had a solid day for the most part. I don't think he really got caught up in too much. Was in that lead 4 Tango at the end of the race. but ended up finishing 4th there. Brad Keselowski was one of my others. Had another consistent day for the most part. I know at one point I think he overshot his pit box and lost a lot of track position that really had been crucial for him. He had been up front most of the day, and I think that's kind of put him behind the ball a little bit just for maybe about 50 to 100 laps. But Keselowski rebounded with another strong, underrated performance, another top 10. No wins again, but I mean, Brad's consistency this season is very similar to that of Chris Buescher, and I think that it's putting Brad in a really good spot to be able to make it very deep in this playoff run. So all he has to do is keep getting these top 5s and top 10s, and Brad will be in good shape. So he's the guy to definitely look out for, and I think a win's on the horizon just with the numbers that he's putting up. My other 2 drivers kind of changed the course of the race, I would say. And they were involved in an incident, I don't know on what lap, but it was a little bit later in the race, and it was Tyler Reddick, as he was leading, fending off actually Kevin Harvick. I feel like a lot of people forgot Kevin Harvick had a shot to win this race and was actually putting himself in position to probably go on and lead the last part or the last stint of the race, and that was because he was coming down pit road to take the lead and short pit on Tyler Reddick. And I don't know what Reddick was doing, but he inadvertently cost Kevin Harvick's race while also saving his race entirely from, being eliminated from a shot at the win because he completely botched the pit stop. And Ryan Newman was, luckily able to see what happened ahead of him, and he ended up spinning out, and it caused a caution. So big heads up on Ryan Newman. Of course, we haven't talked about him in a minute, and he was in the race. I feel like people forget about. But heads up on Newman to avoid Reddick. If he ran at the back, Reddick's day could have been done. But in doing so, pit road ended up being closed. Kevin Harvick had to service a pit road penalty, and in doing so, it took him out of contention to win. So it's kind of unfortunate because, I feel like, and I hate to say it, but like that could have been Kevin Harvick's last shot to win a race in NASCAR, and it was taken away. So I don't know if he's going to have any other opportunities. Like Bristol's coming up. Kansas, he actually fares pretty well out, all things considered, with Ford and Stewart-Haas as a whole. But, it's just unfortunate to see what happened to Kevin. But at the same time, kind of worked out for Tyler Reddick at the end of the day. Ended up having a really solid run. He wasn't able to get around Larson at the end. Kind of got stuck in that dirty air where he couldn't really close into a certain point, even though he was able to ride in the high line. As soon as he caught him, it wouldn't work out. And plus he had Chris Buescher and Byron that seemed a little bit quicker at times than the lead 2, but they just couldn't get around Reddick either. So a good day for Reddick, an unfortunate hump for Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick currently sits 2 below the cut line, but he's in 14th. And 2 below is easy to make up in these playoffs, but you have to have things go your way.
All right, and that just leaves 4 guys left. We'll start with Christopher Bell, the pole sitter. But unfortunately, right away in the beginning parts of the race, had trouble on pit road where the jack dropped, and that set them back. And he ended up finishing 23rd with only scoring, I think he finished 3rd in the first stage, but then no points in the second stage, and then ended up 23rd there. So he dropped back. He's pretty close to the cut line. He's only 1 above the cut line right now. So thankfully they have a couple tracks that I think fare well for Christopher Bell. Kansas, you ride the high line a lot, and then Bristol, he's always been pretty decent at Bristol. So I think this was their one bad race that they could afford, but they really need stage points and a good finish at both Kansas and Bristol. Another guy that finished just ahead of him by a few spots was his teammate Martin Truex, which this was a really uncharacteristic race for Martin Truex at Darlington. I think we were all expecting the 19 to run up front all race long, but he didn't score. From what I'm seeing here, he didn't score any stage points. Finished 18th. I know that they had some trouble on pit road as well. but there was just no sign of the 19 anywhere. I mean, it was like a lost dog ad got put up, and it was Martin Truex's face on it.
I really ruined his weekend by picking him.
You really did. You are like the kiss of death for whoever you pick. So please pick Denny Hamlin this weekend. Then Kyle Busch, he got 11. He got some stage points. Yeah, Kyle Busch got some stage points in the second stage. Kept himself out of trouble. You know, he finished 11th. It seems to be pretty much on par for where that 8 team has been recently. He sits 20 points above the cut line. So I think that he's in good shape as long as nothing bad happens. I mean, they just have to maintain where they're running at. They don't have to do anything crazy. Just go out and just put a race together and don't get yourself in trouble. Don't have mechanical failures if you can avoid them. Don't have mistakes on pit road or any of that. So Kyle Busch 11th. And the last guy that we got to bring up is Bubba Wallace. He had quite the eventful day to start. Right at the end of stage 1, got into Joey Logano, spun himself out. Incredibly didn't hit anything or anyone else. And he was able to rebound and finish 7th. And he only finds himself 1 point below the cut line. This is the only thing that really could have made this day better for them is if they gotten stage points. But I think with them rebounding from the spin and coming back to finish 7th, this is exactly the type of day that Bubba Wallace needed. And they go to Kansas where he won last year and is arguably probably his best track. So I think they got through the first hump, which is Darlington, get out of there with a solid finish, which they did, and now go on to Kansas. But they have to focus on getting stage points if you want to see this 23 car advance through the playoffs. So, but I think overall, I think you can take away that it was a good weekend for them.
Yeah. So that was our playoff driver race recap from Darlington. With that, we are going to move into Kansas. We got some race picks to make. Last 2 winners here, Bubba Wallace last year in the fall and Denny Hamlin winning in the spring. So Toyota seems to have a good hold on the race at Kansas, and Kurt Busch winning last spring. So 23-11 and Joe Gibbs Racing really have been dominant here in the next gen era. Will that domination continue this year? Well, let's see what we got to say about it. Hopefully Wes can make his pick here. Hopefully this audio bug is going to clear up enough for him to make a pick.
Listen, it's just a whole night of technical difficulties.
It really is. I don't know how I sound at the moment. We're gonna rock with it. We're talking about also the kiss of death over here because I am going first in picks again. And if I've gone first or second every time, which means I've finished third or fourth every time in picks. So I'd like to go at least second and maybe win one sometime. Thanks, Denny Hamlin and crew, for having a rough day at Darlington after leading all of it. That was nice. Loved really seeing that. So we're gonna pick somebody else, I guess. I don't know. I believe in the Toyotas, and I really want to believe in a guy like Christopher Bell, to be honest. But like I talked about, he's made way too many mistakes this year, you know. So until he's able to get back in victory lane, I just don't feel confident in picking him. I thought about Bubba, but I'm just worried about the playoff pressure. Would love to see him get a win, but I feel like it's a different situation this year than last year for pretty much all these guys. So I'm actually going to go out on a limb. I'm actually going to avoid our Toyotas in full, and I'm going to go out of left field. I'm picking a guy that shows up in the playoffs. We haven't talked about him in a while, but he has won on a 1.5 miles this year. He's a guy we haven't talked about in a while. It's actually Ross Chastain. I think Ross Chastain's going to show up, and I think people are really overlooking him. He's got the resources, he's got the team. I mean, there's nothing really in Suarez right now that they're too focused on, right? Suarez is doing his own thing, mixing it up with Alex Bowman. So I think that I think Ross Chastain is going to be a guy we're going to talk about this week, and I think that a mile and a half he's able to display the talent and what he's capable of doing. And I just think that we haven't seen it in the past few weeks, but this is the time for him to show what he's got.
I really thought you were going to go with Ricky Stenhouse until I heard, and he won on a mile and a half.
He didn't cross my mind once, but Ricky, you'll get a shout out from me. We love you. You're welcome on the podcast.
Well, I thought you were going to take my pick because the way you were describing this guy, I thought you were taking my pick all day long. And
well, it's not Michael McDowell.
So my guy has won in a mile and a half this year as well, but we haven't talked about him really much over the summer or really now. But that's Joey Logano.
Ooh.
He is a
Oh,
winner.
I
at
hate you,
John.
He is a
Oh,
winner
my
at
God.
Kansas in the playoffs before.
Oh my
And
God.
he finished
Don.
sixth there in the spring. It just seems like a race for Joey Logano to come out of left field and just
Dom-
win.
Joey's gonna come out of left field and blow a damn engine because you picked him.
I think he's gonna win.
Okay.
I mean,
Whatever you say.
That's gonna get me my first win of the season. I went with Martin Truex. That seemed like a lock to win Darlington, and the team just unloaded and never got off the truck. So,
all right, so Logano 3-point buffer. I see about probably 12 below by the end of Kansas.
Yeah, I that's a win I'll gladly give you if he ends up if you can get out of your funk. God, I hope you do this week at least. Well, I mean, you guys put it right there, right in front of me. You left the winner. Once again, I'm sitting in the third slot. You left the winner sitting right in front of me. It's Bubba Wallace. Won here last year, finished fourth in the spring. He knows how to run this place. He really does. He's like me in every NASCAR video game. I can run Kansas, and I can only run Kansas. Don't expect me to be in the front of any other league races. But Bubba he knows, he's figured something out. Next gen car, he's figured something out. It suits his driving style. He likes the way that Kansas is run. And I believe, unlike both of you that want to not believe in the Toyotas, even though the Toyotas have shown their dominance at Kansas, I believe in Bubba, and I believe in Toyota, and I believe in 2311, and I think that Bubba will punch his ticket to the round of 12 and prove pretty much everyone wrong, because no one besides a handful of people have him go into the round of 12. So I think Bubba goes back to back on Kansas fall wins, and he punches his ticket to the next round.
I mean, the only reason I didn't pick a Toyota is just it seems like whenever they dominate a weekend and it looks like they have the race on lock, they just can't finish the race for whatever reason. They can't finish the race at Victory Lane.
You're not wrong.
Well, unfortunately, I think this week at Kansas, I'm going to have to get my third win of the year, because you guys didn't pick this guy either. A guy who historically has been pretty bad at Darlington, got points in both stages, and finished ninth, surprisingly. I'm going to come a little bit further out in left field than where Dom went. I'm going to give it to the Coca-Cola winner, and that's going to be Ryan Blaney, who's going to come back and win at Kansas, solidify his spot. Even though last week I said that he would be one of the four guys eliminated after the round of 16, I'm going to backtrack that on a little bit, because I think he's going to win Kansas, get himself into the next round, and I have the 12-car Ryan Blaney winning at Kansas.
Well, we already know Steve is very back and forth, and he's already going up against his.
Hey, One thing
First
that I have
four
gone
out.
back and forth on, Ricky Stenhouse is not making the round of 12. That is one thing.
Roll Tide.
Why not? I don't see why. Ricky didn't have his best day, and he's only 4 points out.
I
That's
think
one
Ricky
thing
did
that-
have his
And-
best day, and he's 4 points out.
And Bristol is one of Ricky's best tracks. He's got top fives there.
And he's gonna try too hard and end up wrecking himself because he's Ricky Stenhouse. He's Ricky Spinhouse. He's gonna find a way, even if he does okay. I'm not hopping back on that soapbox. Let's just wrap it up.
Well, just like Britt said, we got to wrap things up here. We got Kansas this week. Next week, we'll be back to wrap up Kansas, and we're going to talk about the first elimination race of the playoffs at Bristol, the Bristol night race. Everyone enjoy the racing this weekend. Follow us on Twitter at Four and Fuel Podcast, and you'll see our handles here in the video version under our names. For Wes, Sam, Steve, I'm Dom. We'll see you next week. Enjoy the races.